It is Thursday morning, 11 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here together with me, and it is time to study Parsha. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Bo. To tell you the truth, I don't know why more of a big deal is not made out of the fact that this is the actual Parsha of Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is the week. This is the Parsha in which the Jewish people actually leave Mitzrayim. Everything here till here's a build up, everything from here. Repercussion of this referred to as the birth of the Jewish nation. Be'etzem hayom hazeh, on that very day, the Jewish people left. Parsha's Bo, Parsha Yetzias Mitzrayim. Incredible stuff. Okay, if you have a chumash in front of you, please join me. Study together with me. I'm going basically to the beginning of the Parsha, where Moshe and Aaron come to Pharaoh and they warn him of plague number 8. The last 3 of the 10 plagues take place in this week's Parsha. Plague 8 is the makas, is the plague of Arba, the plague of locusts, and they warn Pharaoh that it is going to be ferocious. There are going to be so many locusts, they say to Pharaoh, the likes of which your fathers and your fathers' fathers have never seen such a thing. It's going to be crazy. And at this stage, Moshe and Aaron, they've earned credibility. When they say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And there is a crack, if you will, that develops in the court of Pharaoh. And basically, the beginning of the Parsha, Perek Possuk Zion. So after Moshe and Aaron leave, after having given this warning, and again, they're not mincing their words here. They're telling Pharaoh the locusts are going to eat. The locusts are going to eat whatever's left over from the hail is going to be consumed by the locusts. So Pharaoh's own servants, his own people, they turn to him. And they say to him, how long is this gonna be a problem for us? How long are you gonna let this go, Pharaoh? How long? This is not okay. They said to Pharaoh, right? They said to him in Yiddish. They said, Rabbanu Shalom, genug shein. Anybody here speak Yiddish? Genug, they said. Let them go. What do we need this for? Every month, another plague. It's getting out of hand. Let them go. Let them serve their God. Remember, we're going to discuss this at great length, but remember at this point, all Moshe and Aaron are asking is they're asking for the rights to travel for 3 days into the desert, have 1 day of serving Hashem, and then to come straight back. That's all they're officially asking for. And because Pharaoh is refusing to give them that, that's why they're getting all these plagues. So the servants of Pharaoh turn to him and they say, Ad Mosai. How long are we going to suffer with these Jews? Give them what they want. Enough already. Haterem Teda, they say to Pharaoh, don't you realize Mitzrayim, that if as long as we fight with them, the Mitzrayim is getting destroyed in the process. They've already had 7 plagues. All right, the Torah doesn't tell us what or if anything Pharaoh said in response, but it's clear at this point that there is a crack in Pharaoh's resistance. Vayushav es Moshe ves Aaron al Pharaoh, and Moshe and Aaron are brought back to Pharaoh. Negotiations, Middle Eastern negotiations. Vayomer aleim, and Pharaoh says to them, all right, says Pharaoh, you win. Lechu, listen to the words of Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, all right, lechu ivdu es Hashem Elokeichem. You've been asking me repeatedly for the right to go and serve your God. Fine, says Pharaoh. I acquiesce, I fold. Unbelievable. I acquiesce, I agree, I fold. You may go and serve your God. Fine, go. Mi v'mi hahoilchim, says Pharaoh. The devil is always in the details. So tell me who's going. Moshe says, what do you mean? Bin oreinu uviskeinenu nelech, with our young and with our elderly we shall go. Bibonenu bivnoisenu, with our sons, with our daughters. I have to tell you, I remember hearing the Lubavitcher Rebbe repeating these words over and over again, borrowing, if you will, these words of the Possuk referring to the coming of Mashiach. Binoreinu, biskeinenu, bivonenu, bivnoisenu. Right, the words of Moshe, with our young, with our old, with our sons, with our daughters, bitzoinenu, bivkorenu, with our sheep, with our cattle, Ki Chag Hashem lanu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Sagroisa yontif." We're good again. We're keeping this. We're holding on to this. We're holding on to this anecdote here that it's a 3-day journey to serve Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu says, but it's a Chag Hashem. It's a Groisa Yonta for us. Everybody's going. Vayomer Aleim, Paro says to them, Yehi Chein Hashem imochem. Paro says, the words here are difficult to understand. Yehi Chein Hashem imochem. So may it be, Hashem is with you. Kasher ashalach eschem ve'estapchem, when I send you with your children. Ru'u says Paro, see, ki ro neged pneichem. Evil is before you. Loiche, not so, says Paro. L'chuno hagvorim v'ivdu es Hashem. Only the men can go and serve Hashem. Ki oiso atem avakshim, because this is what you've asked, this is what you seek. Vayagorish oiso me'es pnei Paro, and he chased them away from in front of Paro. Again, Vayomer Lein, Paro responds, 2 verses, quote, Yehi Chein, may it be so. Hashem imochem, Hashem is with you. Kasher ashalach eschem estapchem, when I send you and your children, Ru'u ki ro neged pneichem, see that evil is before you. Loiche, not so, says Paro. L'chuno hagvorim v'ivdu es Hashem, only the men can go. Let the men go and serve Hashem. Ki ois atum avakshim, because this is what you seek. And he chased them away from in front of Paro. The words here are very, very ambiguous, very unclear what it is exactly that Paro is saying. The whole thing is very unclear. What is clear is that Paro resists. Paro says, no, that doesn't make any sense. If you're going to serve Hashem, if you're going to serve Hashem, then all you need is the men. What are you taking little children and little children, babies? Paro says, I don't buy this. This doesn't make any sense. If you'd like for the men to go, Paro says at this point, you may go. The men may leave if they'd like. They may go on a 3-day journey. They may serve and offer sacrifices to Hashem as you wish. It's assumed at this point that Paro is even okay with them taking animals to offer up as sacrifices. But the rest, the old, the young, the sons, the daughters, the little children, Tapchem, Paro says that doesn't make any sense. It's not even what you've asked for, says Paro. It's not even what you've asked for. You've only asked for the opportunity to go serve Hashem. Paro says, that I say yes, but everything else is just you guys mumbo-jumboing, and that I refuse. Of course, Moshe, the understanding here is, of course, Moshe and Aaron are not backing down. They're like, no. Binoreinu, biskeneinu, bibonenu, bibnoiseinu, our young, our old, our sons, our daughters, etc. So Paro says, okay, no deal. No deal. Doesn't make any sense. And they get chased away from before Paro. This is the simple understanding of the Pessukim, and this is correct. The challenge here is the details. What exactly does it mean? Some of the specifics. Some of the terms are a little, not a little, they're very ambiguous and difficult to understand. So today I want to share with you three interpretations. Actually, they're all relatively well known, all relatively famous, but I want to go somewhere with these three. So I'm going to share with you relatively briefly 3 interpretations here on the details of Paro's response. Again, the general theme of Paro's response is, if you really just want to go to the desert to serve Hashem, all you need is the men. For that, says Paro, you have my permission, you may go. That's what you've asked for, and my answer to you is yes. Now that you're saying you want to take your sons, your daughters, your old and your young, Paro says, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit with what you've asked until now. And so my answer to that, says Paro, is no. And since Moshe and Aaron refuse to budge, the negotiations fall apart and they leave. Okay. The first one that takes us into a deeper element into this conversation is, of course, Rashi. On the words "Ru'u ki ro neged pneichem," Paro says, "See, there is evil. There is evil that is in front of you." Rashi quotes a Midrash. Midrash Agoda, says Rashi. Midrash Agoda Shemati. I heard a Midrash, says Rashi. There's a star. There is a constellation, that's the word. There's a particular star or muzzle, whatever the case may be. The name of the star is Ra. Ra means bad, means evil. This star, says Rashi, is a sign of dam. It's a siman dam. Amar lahem Parai. Parai says to Moshe and Aaron, Rashi quotes this Midrash. Parai says to Moshe, I have some news for you. Roya ani b'tztagninus sheli. Parai says, I'm an astrologer. Either Parai himself was the astrologer, or he had astrologers who would tell him things, whatever the case may be. The simple reading of the words of Rashi. Parai says, Roya ani b'tztagninus sheli. I'm an astrologer, says Parai. I can see stuff. Parai says to Moshe and Aaron, I have some news for you. This star called Ra, which is a siman dam, is waiting for you in the desert. Quote, Oile likraschem bamidbar. Oile likraschem bamidbar, says Parai, you think that you're going to freedom? You think you're going to walk out of here and you're going to go into the desert and life is going to be better for you? Says Parai, I'm telling you, I'm not threatening you. This part's not a threat. This part's not a negotiation. I'm an astrologer. I'm telling you, I see something. I see something. It's a star. Its name is Ra. It's a siman dam. It's rising up to greet you into the desert. It's going to be a bloodbath, says Rashi. You think you have it bad now in Egypt? Ho, ho, ho. Wait till you go into the desert. I see astrologically that you're all going to get killed. Says Rashi, you think Parai was wrong? You think Parai was wrong? He was dead right. He was on the nail. What he saw was 100% true. And that's why, says Rashi, when the Jewish people sinned in the Egel Azov, which is approximately 90 days after they left Mitzrayim, 92 days to be specific, 92 days after the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, Kshechot Yisrael Be'egel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bikesh L'Hargam, the Rabbi Shalom wanted to annihilate the entire Jewish nation. He wanted to kill them all. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? Moshe davened, Omar Moshe b'tfilosim, Moshe davened to Hashem. We read this Possuk on every fast day. Lama. Moshe Rabbeinu said, why Hashem? Why would you kill? Don't kill them, Hashem. Because if you do, Lama, Yoimru Mitzrayim Lemor B'ro'o Hoitziyam. Yoimru, you remember this verse? Yoimru Mitzrayim Lemor B'ro'o Hoitziyam. Moshe says to the Rabbi Shalom, if you kill the Jews for worshiping the golden calf, then the Egyptians will say, you see, we were right. Bero'o Hoitziyam. Simply Bero'o Hoitziyam means Hashem took them out with bad intentions. But Rashi is explaining it based on the Midrash. In the words of Parai, Parai said to Moshe before they left, Ru'u ki ra neged pneichem. See, you're going to go into the desert. There's a koichov, there's a star, there's a mazel called Ra. It's waiting to greet you. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, when the Jews worship Egel Azov, and Hashem says, I'm going to kill them. Moshe says to Hashem, if you do kill them, it'll be the fulfillment of Parai's prophecy, who said, if you take the Jewish people out of Egypt into the desert, they're all going to die. Siman dam. Oh, says Rashi, when Hashem heard that, Vayinochem Hashem al Aro, Hashem said, oh no, we better not do that. Vayinochem Hashem al Aro, so to speak, Hashem changed his mind al Haro regarding this Ra, and instead, 40 years later, when the Jewish people were about to go into Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua gave them all a bris milah, and he said, it was switched, it was changed over for the dam of dam milah, which the Jewish people had before they went into Eretz Yisrael. Agansumais. That Parai didn't know. And that perhaps even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know. But this, says Rashi, Parai is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, Parai is telling him, if you do, Parai tells Moshe at this stage, when he's warning him about the plague of Arba, of locusts, Parai tells Moshe Rabbeinu, listen, if you actually do take the Jewish people out of Egypt, and you do actually go into the desert, I'm just letting you know, there's a koich of echad yesh shmoy ra, this star, this constellation called Ra, which is a siman dam, is waiting for you. Parai says, I see that your entire nation will be destroyed. And Parai says he was right. What he was talking about, what he was seeing astrologically / albeit, as much as it's possible for a goy, prophetically, what he was seeing was the equivalent, as much as he could see, of Hashem's decree to annihilate the Jews after they worshipped Eikel Hazor, which was switched, which was canceled, which was aborted, only because Moshe said to Hashem, if you do, it'll be the fulfillment of Parai's prophecy of doom, that this would happen. Yomru Mitzrayim B'ro Ha'itzion. Okay. That's number one. Number two, Midrash Rabba. Midrash Rabba says, I don't want to read it. The Midrash is a little bit long. I don't want to read it. If you want, you can look it up. It's actually not a particularly complicated, in non-midrashic style. It's a relatively straightforward and actually relatively easy to understand, at least on a surface level. It's a very straightforward Midrash. According to the Midrash, Pharaoh confronted Moshe about something else. Again, according to Rashi, the Midrash that Rashi quotes, he confronted him about their destiny in the desert. According to the Midrash, Pharaoh made a much more simple point. Pharaoh said to Moshe, listen to me. Pharaoh said to Moshe, listen to me very carefully. We both know, says Pharaoh to Moshe, that you're lying to me. We both know that you're not going into the desert for a 3-day journey to offer sacrifices to Hashem. We both know that you're leaving and not coming back. V'horaya, the proof, says Pharaoh to Moshe Rabbeinu, is if you were really just going to offer up sacrifices, then you would just take derech habachurim v'hazkenim lizboyach. It's the way of bachurim, of young men, of elderly men to go out and offer sacrifice. Vaktanim vaktaf, children, babies go to participate in the sacrifices. Misha omer dover ze ein daito ela livroyach. Barry says, you're not going anywhere for 3 days. You're planning to escape. Which means, says Pharaoh, you're lying to me. You're not being honest with me about what it is that you really want. Oisa atem avakshim, the Midrash says. Pharaoh said to Moshe Rabbeinu, there's something else that you really want, but you're not articulating it. You're not telling me what it is that you want. You really want to leave. Pharaoh says, why don't you have the guts to say what it is that you really want? So Pharaoh says, get out of here. Get out of here. What is this, some kind of a game? You're going to tell me you want to go sacrifice to your God. No, I'm going to tell you yes. Then you're going to change the ask. Why? Because you're not telling me what it is that you really want. We both know what it is that you really want, but for whatever reason, you're choosing not to say it. Pharaoh says, I can't deal with people changing the ask every 10 seconds, right? Again, Middle East negotiations. Every 10 seconds, we're talking about something else. Again, Pharaoh said, get out of here. So again, according to the Midrash, Pharaoh accuses them of being, again, not the words of the Midrash, but the idea, Pharaoh accuses them of being hypocritical. Your intention is one thing and you say something else. Pharaoh said, I cannot work with this. Second interpretation. The third interpretation, drum roll, please. Of course, my favorite is from the Baal Haturim. Now, this one actually is this particular Baal Haturim is a very famous one, but the Baal Haturim kind of highlights what it is that we're learning about over here, and as usual, in his inimitable style, takes the whole thing to the next level. To the next level. And here I have to read to you the words of the Baal Haturim because they are just jaw-dropping. Omar Paroi Moshe, says the Baal Haturim. Paroi says to Moshe, quote, Ma atem mevakshim kol kach lolechas. Why are you so eager to leave Mitzrayim? What are you so excited about? Oh, we're going to be free. Says Paroi, V'chi atem svurim likones la'aretz. Do you really think that you're going to Eretz Yisrael? Really? Oh, Hashem has promised us chosen nation, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Really, says Paroi. Really, Azai, I have news for you. Mi v'mi ha'holchim likones la'aretz. Who do you think is going to end up going into the land of Israel? Nobody. Ki kulam yamusu bamidbar. Ki kulam yamusu bamidbar, says Parai to Moshe and Aaron, Dreit mir nish kein Kop, don't sell me lokshin. The millions of Jews that you are taking out of Eretz Yisrael, that you are taking out of Egypt, are not going into Eretz Yisrael. Don't lie to me. They're all going to die in the desert. Chutz mi Yeshua v'Kolev. Except says Parai for two people. Yeshua and Kolev, that's it. Where do you see that in the words of Parai? Says the Baal Haturim. Mi v'mi ha'hoilchim begamatria Kolev ubinun. Baal Haturim is actually more famous for his gematria. It's interesting. I find other interpretations of his. Me, it's just me. I find more intriguing than his gematria, but he's known for his gematria. And here he drops a ripping atom bomb gematria. Listen to this. Mi v'mi ha'hoilchim, says the Baal Haturim. 3 words. Mi v'mi ha'hoilchim, gematria 216. You know what it has the same gematria as? Kolev ubinun. Kolev and the son of Nun. Yeshua, the son of Nun. Those are the only two, says Parai, to Moshe and Aaron. Those are the only two people who will both leave Egypt and go into Eretz Yisrael. Everybody else, kulam yamusu bamidbar. Everyone else is dying in the desert. Moshe, no, what are you going to say to that? What are you going to say to that? He's right. Moshe, and Moshe Rabbeinu responds, Binoreinu vizkeinenu nelech, with our young and with our old we will go. So again, on a pshat level, we're talking about who's going to leave Mitzrayim. Pharaoh says you can take the men, or Pharaoh at this stage, Pharaoh is asking who's going, and Moshe Rabbeinu says everybody's going, including our young, Binoreinu vizkeinenu, including our old, our sons, our daughters, everybody. But on a deeper level, says the Baal Haturim, we're not talking about who's going to leave Mitzrayim. Parai knows everybody's leaving Mitzrayim. Parai knows they're not coming back. Parai is telling, we're talking about who's going into Eretz Yisrael. Parai says, no one's going into Eretz Yisrael. Everybody, kulam yamusu bamidbar. Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're wrong. Why? Because our old and our young, they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. You're right, says Moshe to Parai, that the whole Jewish nation will die in the desert. But what you're seeing is only between 20 and 60. The decree that the Jews should die in the desert would only apply to those Jews young between 20 and 60. But binoreinu, bizkeinenu, the ones who are less than 20 and older than 60, against them there's no decree, and so they will go into Eretz Yisrael. End of commentary in Baal Haturim. Wow. According to the Baal Haturim, Parai and Moshe Rabbeinu are having another conversation here. Parai is telling Moshe, you're going to hit me with makas over and over again. At some point, I'm going to have to let you go. Whatever the case may be, maybe I'm prepared to let you go now, maybe not. Whatever the story is, fine, you'll go. But Parai says to Moshe, you're not going into Eretz Yisrael. 2 of the whole generation. We're talking about at this stage, we're talking about 10 million Jews. And Parai looks at Moshe Rabbeinu and says, 10 million Jews, 2 of them are going into Eretz Yisrael. 1, 2. Kolev and Ben Nun. That's it. Everybody, everybody's going to die in the desert. No, says Moshe, you're wrong. Binoreinu bizkeinenu. The younger than 20s and the older than 60s, against them there's no decree, and they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. End of commentary in Baal Haturim. Okay. So now let's ask the obvious question. Number 1, according to Rashi, Parai is warning Moshe Rabbeinu that there's a star, a siman of dam v'hariga, siman dam v'hariga, waiting for them in the desert. The Jewish people are going to face death. Number 2, according to the Midrash, Parai says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you're lying. You're not planning to go for 3 days. You're planning to go and never come back. You're not being honest with me. And number 3, according to the Baal Haturim, Parai is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to take the Jews out of Egypt to take them to Eretz Yisrael, and in the end, they're all going to die in the desert. and only Yeshua and Kalev are going into Eretz Yisrael. The challenge here is that according to all of these interpretations, Paro is right. He's not just right, he's penetratingly, profoundly correct. He's touching on a very, very raw nerve here. And inherently, what he's telling Moshe Rabbeinu is, I don't know what you're so excited about. This is what you're telling the Jews. Really? Paro says, I can see a thing or two, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of bloodshed waiting for you. Everybody's going to die in the desert. What are you so excited about? And why b'chlal are you not being honest with me about what it is that you want? You're not really going, says Paro, you're not really interested in going and offering up sacrifices to Hashem. You're really planning to leave. So number one, you're not being honest. Number two, you're not going to end up going into Eretz Yisrael, only Yeshua and Kalev. And number three, you're going to face siman dam, roa neged pnechem, siman dam v'harigo. It's a siman of blood and death. Moshe Rabbeinu's response, Moshe Rabbeinu's response seems weak. Yes, but the decree won't be against the young and the old. Nu beseder, so it won't be against the young and the old. Nu. Therefore what? Therefore what? Inherently, Paro is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you're going to your own people, you're selling them geula, you're taking them out into the desert, right? But you're not really going to deliver on the promises that you're making, are you? Because in the end, kulam yamusa bamidbar. And you read this and your mouth has to hit the floor. Like Paro is really, for a man whose heart has been hardened by Hashem, and he's in a position where he doesn't have a lot of options, or his options are very difficult. Like the guy is really onto something. How did he know all this? How did Paro know all this? What is the solution to all of this? But what really is Moshe Rabbeinu's answer? And of course, most importantly, what do we take from all of this? All right. So I met somebody this week who says to me that he learns a lot of Megillas Rus from our Shiur. So this week, I'm going to study with you a Midrash very briefly on Megillas Esther. The Midrash is almost, I don't want to say, God forbid, humorous, but it's almost like a bit of a play on the word. Not chas v'shalom, a play, but I'm saying the Midrash is sort of like, interpreting. When you first read it the first time, it almost kind of like makes you chuckle. The Midrash is on the words Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. All right, if you want to look it up, it's in Esther Psichta. It means in the beginning of the Midrash on Megillas Esther, it starts with a section called Psichta. Psichta means the opening or the introduction. It's actually pretty lengthy. So the Midrash says like this. The Midrash says that the Jewish people in the days of Purim, they became, in the days of the decree, the days of the decree of Haman and Achashverosh, they became aware of something very painful. They became aware of the fact that Haman only exists, Haman only came into existence because Shaul HaMelech did not wipe out entirely the nation of Amalek at the time that he was instructed to, right? He was told, Lech v'kisas Amalek, go and wipe out the nation of Amalek. And he wiped them all out, but he left Agag, the grandfather of Haman, he left him alive, and he only died the next day, etc. So the Jewish people became aware that Haman's existence, Haman only came into existence because Shaul HaMelech hadn't properly fulfilled the mitzvah that he was supposed to do. So they recalled, when the Jewish people became aware of this, they recalled something that Moshe Rabbeinu had told them. Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden before they went into Eretz Yisrael, he told them, if you don't entirely annihilate your enemies when you come into Eretz Yisrael, if you leave some of them behind, if you leave some of them alive, and it will be asher toisiru mehem, the goyim that you leave over, that you leave alive, will be lasikim beinechem, will be like needles, like pins in your eyes, will itzninim b'tidechem, and thorns in your side. Moshe tells the Jews, listen, when you do the job, you got it. When you root out, pardon my French, when you root out the cancer, you got to root it out completely. Otherwise, if you leave a little bit behind, it grows back. Lasikim beinechem, pins in your eyes, thorns in your side, etc., etc. And the Jewish people understood that one of the ways of interpreting this was with regard to Shaul. That Shaul HaMelech, instead of entirely annihilating the nation of Amalek, left Agag alive for one day. In the meanwhile, he managed to procreate Agan Semaisa, and Haman is born. Says the Midrash concludes, this is, I want to quote one line. V'kivon shero hakol came, and the Jewish people saw this, that Haman is alive, and Haman is going to try to annihilate them. And that Haman had been brought into existence only. In other words, the Jews themselves had facilitated this. They had allowed this. They had in previous generations, Shaul HaMelech had facilitated the existence of Haman. Had they followed instructions, he would never come into existence in the first place. Says the Midrash, Hischilu hakoil tzoivchin. The Jews began to cry. What does a Jew say when a Jew not just cry? Jews began to scream, right? Hischilu hakoil tzoivchin. The Jewish people began to they began crying out. Now, what does a Jew say? Ever talked to a Jew, right, who's in a bad mood? What does a Jew say? The Jew goes, Oy vay! Oy vay! Says the Midrash, Yischilu hakol tzayvchin vay! The Jewish people began to scream, vay, oy vay! V'zehu, says the Midrash, and this is the meaning of the words, vay yehi. It makes me laugh. I mean, it's not a joke, but there's definitely seems like there's a humorous element to this. The whole Megillah starts off with Vay. What's Vay? Vay is the Jewish people's cry. Oy Gewalt. We've done this to ourselves. We've done this to ourselves. The very existence of Haman, the fact that he's alive and now going to, in the story of Purim, going to threaten the very existence of the Jewish people. We've done this to ourselves. We've done this to ourselves after we were warned not to do this to ourselves. Moshe Rabbeinu told us, if you leave something over, it'll be a pin in your eyes and a thorn in your side. And we left, that is the Yidden, Shaul HaMelech, left Agag alive for a day, and here it is, Haman, the result of our action. That's the Midrash. They began to scream Vai. Okay, without getting into too many details here, there's a Maharal, a commentary of the Maharal on this Midrash, and the Maharal says something. The Maharal in his commentary on Megillas Esther called Or Chodosh, the Maharal says something. When you read it, it's like a punch to the gut. It's like you feel like your kishkis rattle when you read this commentary of the Maharal. I'm going to read it to you in English, just an English translation. The Maharal says, quote, a person is capable of bringing upon himself far greater misfortune than his fellow can ever inflict upon him. Quote, a person is capable of bringing upon himself far greater misfortune than his fellow can ever inflict upon him. Why? Divine providence prevents one's fellow from harming him beyond the extent to which he is deserving of harm. But nothing prevents a person from harming himself limitlessly. A Maharal. The Maharal says this is not some cute humorous Midrash playing on the word Vai. The Jew said, "Oh, Gewalt, we did it to ourselves." The Maharal says, think, you know what the Midrash is saying? The Midrash is saying that this that Haman threatened the very existence of the Jewish people was only possible because Haman existed by virtue of the Jews' own negligence to destroy him. Because the Jews themselves were the ones who had created and fed this monster, that's why the monster was so powerful. Quote, a person is capable of bringing upon himself far greater misfortune than anybody else can bring upon him. If I'm not deserving Rahman al-Islam of misfortune, and you try to bring it upon me, Hashem will protect me. Hashem will protect me from misfortune that you try to bring on me if I'm not deserving. If I'm deserving, I'm deserving. If I'm not deserving, Hashem will protect me from you, and you from me. But if I bring it upon myself, now says the Maharal, Hashem gives us bechira, Hashem gives us free choice. You bring it upon yourself, you're responsible for doing it to yourself. Says the Maharal. The Yidden saw Haman, they saw his power, they said, Ribono shel olam, oy vey. We released this terrorist. We're the ones who allowed him to exist. That's why he was so powerful. That's why he was able to threaten the very existence of the Jews, because the Jews were the ones who propped him up in the first place. Right, along the same lines, the Lubavitcher Rebbe once said, why do we say in the Haggadah that if Hashem hadn't taken us out of Egypt, Hashem hadn't taken our ancestors out of Egypt, we would still be there now? What do you mean? Why would we still be there now? Hashem said 400 years, that's it. The Rebbe said. It's not what it means. What it means is if Hashem hadn't prevented us from going back to Egypt, right? From putting ourselves back in Egypt when the 400 years was over, we'd still be there till today. The Egypt, the Mitzrayim that we create for ourselves, that one can last forever. Again, in the words of the Maharal, Hashgacha Pratis protects me from something that somebody else wants to do to me if I don't deserve it. But Hashgacha Pratis, or at least you need a much deeper, much greater Hashgacha, much greater Siyata Deshmaya to protect me from the tzoros that we create for ourselves. Why did let's go back to the Parsha. Why did Hashem say? Why did Moshe not ask Pharaoh for 3 days? For a 3-day journey. The intention was never a 3-day journey. All right, the answer is because that's what Hashem said, obviously. Hashem said, this is what you should ask for, this is what they asked for. But why did Hashem say that? We're going to give Pharaoh 10 makas if it's klapt von alle Seiten. He didn't know if he was Arthur or Martha. So you couldn't say, leaving forever. The answer is, I believe, the reason why Moshe and Aaron asked for 3 days has nothing to do with Pharaoh. Because it's got to do with Pharaoh. As far as Pharaoh was concerned, in the end, he wasn't prepared to let them go for 3 days. And Pharaoh obviously, the Gemara and the Midrash and Rashi makes it clear that Pharaoh knew that the Jews are not planning to come back. Why are we talking about 3 days? 3 days, Chazal bring, is the amount of time it takes to begin to shift a person's mindset. Right? Avram Avinu goes to the Akedah, it takes him 3 days. Hashem wants to prove that Avram didn't do it in a rush. The Jewish people have to tie, in this week's Parsha, they have to tie the Korban Pesach next to their bed for 3 solid days to examine it. 3 days is the amount of time it takes to begin to absorb psychologically that something is happening here. That's how long it takes, 3 days. The reason why they said 3 days is because of the Jews. The Jews have been in Mitzrayim for 210 years. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the Jewish people and said, time to go, time to be free, time for us to leave. Okay, the Jewish people know that. But how long is it going to take for the Jewish people to begin to realize that they're not slaves anymore? That process is going to take at least 3, in the end it's going to take much longer. But to begin the process, you need 3 days. So Moshe and Aaron come to Pharaoh and they echo the words of Hashem. They say, let the Jewish people go on a 3-day journey and then they'll serve Hashem there. What does that mean? It means after 3 days that they leave Egypt, they will begin to defrost, so to speak. The comatose state of being in Mitzrayim will begin to wear off and they'll begin to start to serve Hashem. That's when it's going to start. They don't ask for 3 days because they're afraid to tell Paro the truth. They ask for 3 days because that's all the Jewish people can handle. That's not, I'm saying that's all psychologically, that's all they can see. They can see themselves being away from Mitzrayim for 3 days. More than that, they cannot even picture. They can't really picture and imagine themselves being a people that are no longer slaves to Paro and Mitzrayim. They have no idea what that is. That's all they know. That's all their parents knew. That's all their grandparents knew. The psychological shift is going to be very painful. Paro knows this. Paro understands that he's not the problem. I'm going to paraphrase here. I'm going to tell you what I think Paro is really saying to Moshe and Aaron. Paro is really telling Moshe and Aaron, you know something? I'm not your problem. If you and the Jewish people are ready to leave Egypt, you guys know where the door is. You don't need my permission. Your God can turn water into blood. He can make frogs appear. He can make lice appear. He can surely open a gate. What do you keep coming back to me for? Your real problem, says Paro to Moshe, is that the Jews themselves are not ready to be free. Paro says, and you're not going to solve that by bringing upon me plagues. You can heap them on my head for Nalazaitin. It's not going to change anything. The Jewish people see themselves as slaves, and because of that, says Paro, they're all going to die in the desert. And I hate to say this. It's a very painful Dvar Torah here. But Paro is right. He's right. He's right. All the Jews are going to die in the desert. Why? You all know the story. Why did all Jewish people die in the desert? Because when they're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, they send spies. And the spies go to Eretz Yisrael, and they come back and they say, Eretz Eicheles Yoshvehi. The land of Israel consumes its inhabitants. Let's stay here in the desert. Let's go back to Egypt. The Jewish people decide to go back to Egypt. And Hashem says, well, you're obviously not ready to go back to go to Eretz Yisrael. You're obviously not ready. And so decrees upon them that for 40 years they die in the desert. And by the way, this is true of the Jewish people who leave Mitzrayim. What about the 80% who don't even want to leave? They b'chlal don't leave. In the end, Paro is telling Moshe Rabbeinu there's something, there's a part to the story, there's a part to the destiny of the Jewish people that you, Moshe Rabbeinu, know, and that I, Paro, know. And Paro says to Moshe, it's not my fault. Stop hitting me over the head with makas and blaming it on me. It's not me. I'm not in your me for me. You tell me who wants to go. Paro says to Moshe, you tell me who's going. You tell me who's coming into Eretz Yisrael. There's going to be an Egel Azov. There's going to be Meraglim. And they're going to be Jews who are constantly wanting to go back to Mitzrayim. I'm in your way. I'm in your way. Go. If you've created your own Haman, and if you've created your own Paroi, then it's Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh. Not because Haman has the power. Haman has no such power. The Jews created a Haman, and now he has power. Rabba says, I'm keeping you in Mitzrayim. As far as I'm concerned, go. I love that the Possuk literally articulates. Paro says to him, L'chu ivdu es Hashem Elokeichem. Go. Paro says, you asked me for permission to go serve Hashem, go. Nobody moves. Not to chas v'shalom compare, or maybe that actually to compare. You know those people who are in difficult situations, difficult marriages, difficult jobs, all sorts of difficult issues. And they sit there and they complain and complain and complain. It's no good and it's no good and it's this one's fault and that one's fault and everybody else's fault. Tell the person, no, if it's so bad, so go. What are you, in prison? Go. No, I can't go. I can't. Why can't you? Of course you're good. But you'd rather stay here and blame everybody else. Mivo mi hahoilchim, says Paro to Moshe. Who do you think is going into Eretz Yisrael? Nobody. The whole generation is dying in the desert. You're coming to me. Let my people go. What? It's a facade, says Paro. It's a very, very strong argument. And it's true. No, what's Moshe Rabbeinu going to say to that? Our young and our old. The decree was only against those between 20 and 60, but younger than 20 and older than 60, there's no decree against them. They're going into Eretz Yisrael. Now, what kind of an answer is that? What kind of an answer is that? Paro tells Moshe, I know what you're talking about. Right? 80% of the Jewish nation will die in darkness because they don't want to leave. And the 20% that do for 40 years, all they talk about is going back. And they'll sin with the Egel Azov, and they'll sin with the Meraglim. They'll eventually go into Eretz Yisrael. They'll build the Beis HaMikdash. Who knows? Paro said to him, the first Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. The second Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. Don't tell the Jews you're taking them to freedom. You're taking them to 3,500 years. The majority of it will be consumed by Golus. And what a Golus it'll be. And Perez says, and it's not my fault. It's your fault. In other words, in the end, when the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim, yes, Perez sent them out, of course, but their departure was anyways miraculous. In other words, you can ask the Klotz Kasha, what do you need the 10 plagues for? If it's time for the Jewish people to go, go. No, blood, frogs, lies, blah. We have to teach Paro a lesson. Or Paro learned a lesson. You want to destroy the Egyptians? The Egyptians get destroyed anyway 7 days after the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim. Retribution for the Egyptians? So bring retributions against the Egyptians. Why are we making one dependent on the other? Inherently, this is the way I understand. Inherently, they're actually not dependent one upon the other. Paro at some level is aware of this, and he's telling this to Moshe Rabbeinu. You're all going to die. You're going to die in the desert, not because I'm going to kill you, says Paro. You're going to do it yourselves. Okay. I want to wrap this up. Moshe Rabbeinu responds to Paro. We're leaving Egypt with our old and with our young, with our sons and with our daughters, and not everybody will have this decree. The young, those who are younger than 20 and older than 60, will not be they will be able to go. They will be able to go into Israel. New white Taka. I believe this is the pshat. On a spiritual level, I believe the interpretation is this. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paro, "You're right. You're right. Ahid has a Yetzer Hara." And Eid has the power of Bechira, and the power of Bechira they can use in a negative sense. And when the Jew uses the power of Bechira in a negative sense against themselves, they can do more damage to themselves than anybody else can do. All true. But says Paro to Moshe, there's something you don't see. In every Jew, there is a nar and there is a zokin. There is a part of the Jew that is young, and there's a part of the Jew that is old, and that's the part that does go into Eretz Yisrael. What does it mean? Poshet. Nar means, in this case, nar means under 20. Binorenu, right? Binorenu means those under 20. This is the Kenenu, those who are older than 60. In general, those who are younger than 20 basically have not yet begun life. Right? Basically immature children, teenagers. Hashem made teenagers in a very interesting way. On the one hand, they're very stupid, right? As long as they should all be moichel me. If any teenagers are watching, nothing personal. But teenagers are very dumb. They say stupid things, they make stupid decisions, etc. On the other hand, their stupidity breeds a tremendous optimism. Tremendous. Right? You ever talk to a teenager? She's gonna, they're ambitious, they're naive. We're gonna do this, we're gonna reinvent the wheel. it goes together with the stupidity, with the naivete of a teenager, who's kind of like, pie in the sky, sort of, yeah, we can do anything we want. But there's a tremendously powerful element to that. This is the teenager. This is the ability of the child to dream, to be truly ambitious, and to not be held down by the norms of society. Now it needs to be channeled, and it needs to be directed, but there's tremendous energy in that can accomplish tremendous things. Once a person has reached the age of 60, we can say, what can we say about a person who's 60? Well, we can say the person now has experience. They've been through, they've experienced with others, they've experienced with themselves, they've been through stuff, and please God, hopefully they've learned from their experience, and they can see that there is something on the other side of the struggle. I believe that this is inherently Moshe Rabbeinu's answer to Pharaoh. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Pharaoh, listen to me. What you're seeing, the Jew, the self-sabotaging Jew, the Jew that produces a Haman for themselves, the Jew that releases their own inner terrorist, the Jew that dies in the desert because he cannot possibly see themselves as going into Eretz Yisrael. They're scared of it. The Jew that constantly wants to go back to Mitzrayim. All of that is true. But it's not the full picture. Inside every Jew, there is a nar and there is a zoken. There is a young and there is an old. And the young and the old are not held down by these restrictions. There is a freshness, there is a nar, there is a youth, there is an ambition, there is a sense of optimism when everything seems burnt to the ground, that a Jew has, that a Jew will never lose. There's a zoken, there's a sense of experience that the Jew learns from what it is that they go through. They learn the truth of their eternity. The nar and every yid has within himself a little nar, a little young person, a little zoken, a little old person, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Bin oreinu ubizkeinenu neilech." The youth that is within every yid, the ambition, the optimism, the ability to turn around after the most painful disasters and rejuvenate with the energy of the young. With that, we're leaving Mitzrayim. With that, we're going into Eretz Yisrael. Bizkeinenu, with our experience, with going through life, with looking back at Jewish history and saying, "B'chol doir v'doir, oimdim aleinu l'chaloseinu, v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzaleinu miyodem, binoreinu bizkeinenu neilech." Ki chag Hashem lonu, says Moshe, because in the end, this is going to be a great yontif for us. Moshe Rabbeinu tells Pharaoh, listen to me. Everything you see in one form or another is true. There's a simen dam v'hariga. There's a kulam yamusu b'midbar. There is chatoim of cheto egel and chatoim of the meraglim. It's all true. It's all true. But it's only a part of it. That's one part of the yid. Because you're a paroi, that's all you can see. Because you're a paroi, that's all. You're looking with your eyes. But the Yidden see something else in themselves. The Yidden see a binorenu biskenenu. A Yidden see the binorenu, the way they come before everything, and biskenenu, the way they come after everything. There was years ago, I actually tried to look this up very quickly, but a couple of years ago, there was a bit of a commotion in the floor of the Israeli Knesset, the floor of the Israeli government. There was, the details are not relevant for now. There was an anti-Semite who, for whatever reason, was given the podium, and he turned to the Israeli government, he said, I don't know, he be speaking on behalf of Sonai Yisrael, on behalf of our enemies. He says, I don't understand. We were here before you. We were here before you. Why are people acting like Balabatim? Was sein dir Balabatim da? And one of the individuals in the Israeli government stood up and said, you weren't here before us. We were here before you, and because we were here before you, we will be here after you. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu's response to Pharaoh. Binoreinu ubizkeinenu. The world was created for us in the beginning. And in the end, the purpose for which the Eibishter created the world will be manifest through us and in us. Yes, some Yidden temporarily will die in the desert, but they will come back with Mashiach and they will go into Eretz Yisrael. Yes, temporarily some Yidden will sin, but eventually they will do tshuva. They will also be reunited. Yes, some Yidden choose to stay in Golus, but it's all temporary. Binoreinu ubizkeinenu neilech. We were born. We were taught the entire Torah when we were in our mother's womb. We were born Hashem's chosen nation. We will continue to be Hashem's chosen. Everything you see, says Moshe the Parai, is all talich. It's all process. The beginning is before you. The end is after you. I'm not blaming you, says Moshe the Parai. As a Parai Melech Mitzrayim, you can never see it. I'm just telling you all of your cheshbonos, all of your calculations. You're looking at a very limited part of the picture. Let us go. Binoreinu biskenenu bovanenu misenu. Ki chag Hashem lanu. The Yom Tov of Hashem, the Yom Tov of Pesach, the Yom Tov of the birth of the Jewish people is ours. We will celebrate it for all eternity. And if 1,000 paros will come our way, they will all in the end have the same fate. In the end, they will be the ones to let the Jewish people go. That's Moshe Rabbeinu's response. Of course, it's not something that Paro can understand, but it's Moshe and Aaron once again speaking on behalf of the Jewish people. They may only be able to see 3 days into their journey now, but that's now. Once we get them in touch with their Ne'orenus, Keinenu, once we reveal within them the energy of their youth and the experience of their and the wealth of their experience, the Jewish people will do what the Jewish people always do. They will rise above any and all obstacles. And with the help of Hashem, please God, merit the final Geula. As we are still in Golus, as these words are being shared, may Hashem bless us with immediate Geula. The Jewish people need a tremendous Geula and a tremendous Yeshua all around the world. We're still unfortunately put in the position, where we look at the enemies of the world and say, we created them, we released them. We released them. May the Rabbi Shalom help us that the Jews find their true inner sources of wellsprings of strength and experience Binoreinu Biskenenu. May Hashem bless the hostages who are Baruch Hashem coming home to their families slowly but surely. May Hashem bless the soldiers, their families, all of Klal Yisrael, all over the world. May the Yidden be safe. For the Jews, there should be Oira, V'simcha, V'sosin, V'kar, Amen. Kain Ti Yalanu. Have a wonderful Shabbos.